Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the first ever 11th episode of Baseball versus the World, a podcast about how baseball relates to the world and how the rest of the world relates to baseball, part of the Just Baseball Media Network, a fantastic website. I'm your host and guide on this maiden voyage through the vast cosmos of all things baseball, not just the stats and on-field nerdy nonsense. I'm Javier Reyes, of course, staff writer here at justbaseball.com. Again, a very good website, as well as the host of the Locked On Padres podcast. And today's guest is, look, here's the thing. I've been saying this before. I will only allow illustrious guests on the show. No one else. They have to be illustrious. Today, I am being joined by the gambling degenerate co-founder of justbaseball.com, Mr. Peter Appel. You know him. You love him. Peter, how you doing?
I love how you introed me with gambling degenerate before co-founder of the entire company that this podcast is under. No, I appreciate it. And I dressed up. This is a big day. We're talking Moneyball here. So I got my A's jersey. And if you're wondering, did I pay $150? No, I paid $10 and got it from China, but it's got Ricky Henderson on the back.
Nice.
Fire jersey, and I'm ready to rock.
That's a W. Ricky Henderson. We need more Ricky Henderson content in some way. I don't care if it's like a mini doc, an episode dedicated. We just need a little bit more for my guy because no one's ever going to replicate what that man did, frankly.
I agree. You know, if you're making an all-time team, he's hitting leadoff. He's hitting leadoff.
That's the other thing. The analytics guys will love him too. Great on-base percentage guy. You know what I mean? So it wasn't just stolen bases. So shouts to Ricky Henderson, man.
But then even screw analytics, like he steals 100 bases a year. Like who cares about it? Literally everything else.
And then also, who cares? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But speaking of analytics and speaking of the A's, Peter already alluded to it. We are talking about Moneyball today. All Moneyball. All right. People might think, oh, well, Javi, you did the best baseball scenes, not too long ago. Yeah, I know. Well, why aren't you doing best baseball movies? Because it's indisputable that it is Moneyball. And that's what we're going to be talking about. It is an award show dedicated entirely to Moneyball. Anyone who watched, I think it was not last episode, but the episode before that, we did the Alex Rodriguez award show. Basically think the Oscars, but all the categories have to do with Moneyball. And that's what I'm going to be doing with Peter today, because Peter, people might not know this, kind of a movie guy, just a little bit, just a tiny little bit, bit of one.
Becoming a movie guy, right? I used to be a bigger movie guy. Baseball kind of got in the way, and I kind of had to decide movies or music. And I'll describe it. So I listen to a ton of podcasts. I read a ton of stuff. I watch a lot of baseball. There's only so much room for other things.
Yeah.
So I haven't been really listening to music because just in my taste of music, I haven't heard a lot of good songs lately. So in my downtime, the hour or two that I have, I'll turn on a movie, and Moneyball is my favorite movie that I've ever seen. And it makes sense because anybody who likes baseball or maybe majored in sport management like I did, this is our Wolf of Wall Street for the finance guys, for the finance bros. The movie that made you think that you could be a general manager of a baseball team. And of course, it made me think at that certain time watching it in high school that I could do the same thing, but I wanted to be a GM far long before that. And that just, furthered that truth that Moneyball really is, while it does have some historical inaccuracies,
we'll get into that
throughout it, still a phenomenal movie. And I've probably seen it 10 times, maybe more.
Yeah. I mean, I've got it at minimum, like 15 at minimum. A friend of mine, actually, shout out to Rylan Stiles of the Locked On Thunder podcast. One of his opening day traditions is every opening day, the night before, he watches Moneyball. And I love that. That's beautiful. I really appreciate that so much. Maybe I should have had him on this podcast as well. What am I doing with you? Oh my God.
Two things I like about that sentence. Number one, Locked On Thunder host. An electric podcast name. I know it's Locked On and then they cover every sports team, but to be Locked On Thunder sounds
good
sick.
Point. I didn't even think about it that way. Yeah.
Number two, a basketball guy getting into his baseball roots. I love this guy. He should be on the show.
Maybe one day, folks. Maybe one day. Here's how it's going to work. This movie released in 2011. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. Here are the categories. We're going to be going over best quote, the best rage moment from one Sir Billy Bean, played by Brad Pitt, the best ignorance of history moment, which Peter just alluded to, the most rewatchable / best scene, the best non-Brad Pitt performance, the best scene of Brad Pitt eating food, and then I will be giving some random other observations that, frankly, I just couldn't think of categories for. And then finally, who won the movie? Dare I say the most fun topic of all. Peter, let's do it, man. Let's do it. I say out of all the categories, I think the one that we have to start off with is the one that we just alluded to. Let's just start off with that, which is the best ignorance of history.
Okay.
The nominees: Miguel Tejada, literally winning the Major League Baseball's MVP for the American League, not even mentioned. You only
Not
hear
once.
it. They do use real life like archival footage in this movie at points, which is another thing the movie does brilliantly by like showing the actors who play some of the players and then also crossing it with the things. It just makes you think that it was like, yeah, this is exactly what it looked like.
Yeah, like Chris Pratt really is Scott Hatterberg.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what they do. Art Howe being portrayed as an old sort of curmudgeon, I don't care about anything. I'm sort of like, I was being praised for this when I didn't do anything sort of manager. Carlos Pena, a fixture of this movie at the beginning because they want him playing at first base and not Scott Hatterberg. He's portrayed as like, oh yeah, he's you can't trade him. He's probably going to be an all-star. 0.1 F4 that year. 0 defensive runs saved. What are we talking about? Like Carlos Pena was not that good. No shots to my guy. You made the major leagues, but that was weird. And then lastly, for nominees, Isringhausen losing a reliever. I'm sorry. I just will never view losing a reliever as like the worst thing to ever happen, absent like a Josh Hader or in old times a Trevor Hoffman, Mariano Rivera type guy. Peter, do you have any other nominees?
I think we have to also include them not talking about Mark Mulder, Tim Hudson, Barry Zito. Those three starters were fantastic, and they were homegrown guys with the A's. We're just not going to mention any of the starting pitchers that led you guys to, a ton of wins and this incredible win streak. I think, though, the winner has to be Miguel Tejada. Has to be. Won the MVP. He won the MVP. Now, did he deserve it? Did he deserve it? No. Did he win the MVP? Yes. There is no reason not to mention the guy who won the damn MVP. Period. End of story. That's the winner. He won the MVP, and you didn't mention him. There it is. That's the winner.
Hot take. He should have won the MVP. Screw the A. No, wait, no, hold on. This is Seattle A-Rod, right? No, it's just Texas A-Rod. Yeah, screw the Rangers A-Rod.
Whatever. But regardless, like that is another discussion for another time. If we're talking about the category for Moneyball, what is the category technically called?
This is just the best ignorance of history.
The best ignorance of history is a movie about a team in that year where the MVP was on that team and not mentioned.
Yeah. It's just, and in fairness, the movie doesn't do as much talking into how they reorganize their pitching outside the crazy, submarine arm guy. Like aside from that, so like they don't focus too much on that. And you could argue that, yeah, I mean, maybe this team in a vacuum, if you didn't know anything, you could say, oh, well, maybe they just offense was their big issue and they lost all the offense. Okay, that's fine. Because that's where they lose Giambi and Damon. So it could be like, okay, at least there's narratively, thematically, tonally, dare I say, a reason for maybe you don't touch as much on the pitchers. But it's got to be Tejada. If you're relishing and talking about Hatterberg, David Justice, some of the catchers they have on this team, right? If you're talking about Carlos Pena being this all-star that they just were so bold to trade, Jeremy Giambi, all these guys, you can't just ignore that Miguel Tejada won the MVP. And even if he didn't win the MVP, bottom line is you had an MVP top 3 sort of guy on your team. Just never mentioned outside some of the archival footage that's like, and Tejada drives in another one. Other than that, nobody knows. So it's just absolutely asinine failure by Moneyball.
And another reason now that furthers your point is it's not like Miguel Tejada was $100 million guy that they signed that then ruins the allure of Moneyball. Yeah. Homegrown player, young player. Like it even fits into the narrative. That's why it doesn't make any sense to me. It fit your movie.
Exactly.
And he didn't have to do much. Just in the conversations that, Brad Pitt's character Billy Bean is having with GMs, with GM being like, would you ever trade Tejada or something, and have him have a rant of how homegrown he was and how he's going to win the MVP and all that kind of, like, even just that was easy. Right. And then you hang up the phone. It's a loud scene and it'd be electric and it would be highlighting the greatness of what Miguel Tejada gave in that year. So, yeah, for so many reasons, that has to be the winner.
And look, in baseball, there are still teams that lose players that have like a couple of stars left, but then never go on to win anything because it's a team sport. This isn't the NBA where you could just have LeBron and cool, we contend every year. So you still could have baked into it all that, but hey, it's more sexy for the movie. We all know that. We know that that's the point. But even still an amazing movie. But best ignorance of history, Miguel Tejada winning the MVP. Just unbelievable stuff by Moneyball. Next, I think, the thing that you talk about first in this movie is Brad Pitt, I think, for a lot of people. And I think that we should, in celebration of that, not talk about Brad Pitt just yet. Let's talk about the best non-Brad Pitt performance of the movie. The nominees, Peter. Chris Pratt, playing Scott Hatterberg, who we mentioned before. The fired scout. The scout that gets fired in this movie, who I forgot to write his name down. The one who just says, "Fuck you, Billy." Just incredible stuff from him. Just quite simply, the guy who says, "Who's Fabio?" I don't know why. That's just really great. Billy Bede's daughter, and then the actor who played David Justice. I am going to look up the names of these people as I let you talk.
How is Jonah Hill not a nominee?
Yeah, so Jonah Hill was meant to be written down. I guess part of me was like, it's so obvious that it's him.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
He should win. I mean, he was phenomenal.
I know. I mean, he's literally nominated for Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. We will be talking about the Oscars later, by the way. I don't know. It's just too easy, so I kind of wanted to not include it. But yeah, I mean, if we're going by any, it has to be Jonah Hill.
But this is your fault right here, because imagine if the Oscars came out and the best picture, whatever, and they don't add the obvious winner, and they're like, well, that was too easy. Can you imagine the uproar? Like, oh, we didn't want to put in the best movie because it was too easy. We would have obviously won. Jonah Hill should obviously win this one. Yeah. Like, flying away. Chris Pratt was fantastic, but again, the movie's not about him. All those guys you named, they're not about the main characters. And Jonah Hill, his portrayal in that, I remember too. I think I heard a story. Maybe it was for another movie, but I feel like it was for this one where the director, like, they instantly, as soon as they, had Jonah Hill come up and do his audition, they like immediately hired him on the spot. I think it was for Moneyball. It could have been for a different movie, but he fit that character like a glove. Him and Brad Pitt work so well together. It has to be Jonah Hill.
Yeah, it's got to be Jonah Hill. I'm mostly just trolling for sake of just having an argument. Also, worth nominating Philip Seymour Hoffman, the late Philip Seymour Hoffman, as well. I want to do two things. First of all, I want to shout out David Justice. I thought he actually has a couple good lines in this and was pretty solid in this. For me, Chris Pratt. There's two things I want to mention. Chris Pratt, first of all, it is astounding that he's just like the seventh person in this movie, considering that he's now one of the like 10 most famous like male actors that we have. It kind of reminds me of like, and I have quoted this movie way too many times, but Dazed and Confused, where Matthew McConaughey, if that movie came out today, he's leading the poster. If this movie comes out today, it's Brad Pitt and it's Jonah Hill, but then right under like a Trinity thing, maybe like a baseball diamond graphic, they show you Chris Pratt. But at the time, so it's just surreal to see him in this sort of role.
With Philip Seymour Hoffman. Like, this cast is loaded.
Absolutely loaded. Absolutely loaded. This also reminds me of like Remember the Titans, where Ryan Gosling is in that movie, and you never would have been like, yeah, that guy's gonna break out. Kind of a little bit like that. So he's got a little bit of that. And then lastly, Jonah Hill. I think what makes him especially win this is that he's just the funny guy before this movie. And I don't actually think this is his best performance. I think it is in Wolf of Wall Street.
No, he's had better performances, but still, this was a great one.
And because especially at the time, I think more and more people are knowing it now, but just to get a little film bro for a second, everybody kind of has this assumption that comedians are just only for comedy roles. When you've had Steve Carell, you've had all these sort of guys absolutely translate. And I think Jonah Hill was one of those first people who did, because he was not just the comedian, he was the chubby comedian, right? So everyone's like, oh, please, he's never. And instead, he's playing this super serious role, and he's great at it. So Jonah Hill, you are the winner, although I did want to give a shout out to all the other non-Brad Pitt performances. Peter, let's move on to the next category. This is going to be a good one. Let's do, to shake it up, because we have two categories that are about Brad Pitt that we have to talk about, with food and his best rage moment. Let's do best quote. Why not? We were just talking about a bunch of lines, and I've got a lot of nominees. First of all, this movie has this thing that's, I feel like you can find it with The Dark Knight. I'm going to land the plane. Just hear me out here. almost any new big movie gets new like meme content these days, right? There's always something. Dune 2, the Al Gaib jokes. Everybody makes them all the time. It feels like every sort of movie has like a memorable scene now because of the internet almost. But back then, early days of Twitter, The Dark Knight, I swear to God, you will find someone tweeting, you know, what's the line for that movie? You either die here or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Everybody tweets that, think it's like the hardest quote. Everyone loves it, and it's been done to death. Moneyball has that thing where there's so many lines pre memes taking over and everything becoming memorable, where I know plenty of people all the time quoting this movie who aren't even baseball fans. That's the brilliance of Moneyball, written by Steven Zalian, also co-written by Aaron Sorkin, who's a very famous writer, of course, as well. Some nominees. How can you not be romantic about baseball? Because he gets on base, he hit a home run, and he didn't even know it. Would you rather get a bullet to the head or 5 to the chest and bleed to death? Are those my only 2 options? I hate losing more than I even want to win, and there's a difference. There are rich teams, and there are poor teams. Then there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us. It's not the full thing, him saying, just it's not that hard. It's not that hard, Scott. It's incredibly hard, played by Ron Washington. Peter, do you have any other nominees here?
You just laid out so many good ones, and it's so hard to choose between all these, right? Like, some of my favorite scenes, one of those quotes where, he waddles like a duck when he's showing him film of Kevin Youkilis, or, that home run with the guy who falls down. Mm-hmm. There's so many good ones, but the 2 that just remain, and I think that they will transcend this movie is How Can You Not Be Romantic About Baseball? That one is up there for me. But the one that hits home the hardest is I hate losing more than I like winning. And because that even relates to my gambling. Like, let's say I go 1-1 on a day, hit 1 pick, lose 1 pick. The winner, good, should have won. The loser, damn it, this sucks. I'm terrible. Yeah. That kind of stuff. And I remember, because baseball is a game of failure, and we've all played it growing up too, right? You go 0 for 3, 0 for 3, then the next game you go 1 for 3, and that feels like, you had a good game, right? But you still got out twice, and you still gotten out 1 of your last 9. But still, like, baseball is a game of failure. So I think it's between those 2. But I think the one that will transcend time, because the one that hits home hardest for me is I hate losing more than I like winning. How can you not be romantic about baseball? I feel like I just say that under my breath whenever a really awesome play happens, like on a Wednesday day game, right? Like, so how can you not be romantic about baseball is the winner for me.
Look, incredible stuff. And there are some lines in this that over the years have taken on another level. You and I, being baseball fans, we've noticed that like the whole "we'll recreate him in the aggregate" has become a meme. The whole "Billy, this is blank and blank. His only defect is that blank." I can't even share some of the memes that I've seen for the "Billy, this is this guy and his one defect." I've only seen the darkest of jokes for that one, especially in baseball as of late. So they've taken on a new life, but in my opinion, it's what's more ingrained in the movie itself. You don't have to know about all that other stuff. I think it's between How Can You Be Romantic About Baseball, because he gets on base and there are rich teams and there are poor teams. I'm struggling here because on the one hand, I think How Can You Not Be Romantic About Baseball, I am docking it because it's very baseball reliant. It's not like you're going to have people who are like basketball fans that are like, yeah, man, I love that quote. You know what I mean? I love baseball, man. Don't you just love the numbers? Don't you love the unwritten rules? Don't you love that like they get mad at you for celebrating and all this stuff?
Wouldn't you also say that he gets on base also falls into that equation?
Exactly. I was going to mention that as well. I do think it's slightly more iconic. Weirdly. I don't know. I don't know, actually. Between those 2, I actually don't know which one I feel like gets said more, because I feel like How Can You Not Be Romantic About Baseball? Do people even know fully? Do they tie that 100% to this movie? I don't know 100% sure.
You might be right. I don't know if
you know what I mean?
100% to this movie.
I'm just wondering because he gets on base. I think though, for me, because of those reasons that is more tied to baseball, I just really like the rich teams and poor teams, 50 feet of crap, and then there's us. I think you can. I've seen many people relate to that. There are rich companies and then there are poor. There are hot people and there are ugly people. Then there's 50 feet of crap. Then there's me. I may or may not have used that one about 2 hours before we started recording. That's my winner because it's just so funny. It gets me every time. I don't know why. I mean, there's a lot of ones. I even mentioned Who's Fabio earlier. Like that one's funny.
That is funny.
Ugly girlfriend. Ugly girlfriend means no confidence. That the entire movie is quotable in a lot of ways.
Actually, that's a good one that I actually refer to a lot more often. When I'm even making jokes, like the ugly girlfriend has got no confidence. Yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that because that quote means a lot because this old school scouting where, they don't have any of the data that we had today. They had out what was his batting average, how many home runs did he hit, how many RBIs, and if you'll be lucky if they even looked at if he was striking out or walking a ton. So that was probably said in a clubhouse and it was meant to be accurate. And I bet other people heard that and said, yes, I agree. I think that is underrated about this movie is that while it sounds so crazy, I wouldn't be surprised if we heard that in multiple front offices. So that's a really good one, but I'm totally fine to go with there's rich teams, there's poor teams, then there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us. That is a great one. So I'm good to have that one be the winner.
Yeah, there's so many. There's the whole when he gets into the look, I'm a high school dropout. Meanwhile, you've got a business economics degree from Yale. That whole thing. I just mentioned the 2 shots to the chest to bleed to death. That's funny. Are those the only 2 options? Jonah Hill selling it really well. But yeah, let's have a co-winner here. You know what? Screw it. We're going to have a co-winner here because on this podcast, we make the goddamn rules. Okay. Rich teams and poor teams and then romantic about baseball. Is that fair?
Fair to me.
Fair to me. Fair to you. Let's move on to one of the 2 other Brad Pitt categories. Do you want to do best rage scene first or best scene of Brad Pitt in food?
Both are great, so you choose.
Okay, let's do rage moment. This movie underrated for how hilariously upset Billy Bean gets in this. I have no idea how he is in real life, right? I don't know that. Maybe this could have been part of ignorance of history if they just completely flibbaged this. I don't know. But hey, there's something very relatable about a movie that has more scenes than you might remember of a man just freaking losing it. And he's not even playing. That's another thing that's fun about this movie is you're used to seeing, there's no crying in baseball, the people getting upset, and Remember the Titans, all these movies where the players rage and whatnot. Instead, it's this guy who's usually in a room with a computer or he's, working out and he's going to kill a man. And by the way, sells it. And I'm like, oh man, yeah, this guy could kill a man. I wouldn't talk to this guy if he's upset. The nominees, Peter. Driving his car in a circle. Just really upset after a loss. He just drives, I believe it's at the beginning of the movie after he leaves, after they are eliminated by the Yankees to start off the movie. Just drives around the car in a circle, does a little donut. Another nominee, smashing his radio on the car and then throwing it out multiple times. This one, actually, my apologies. The driving the car in donuts is later. Smashing the radio on the car, and then throwing it outside. I'm like, yeah, man, totally understand. I get it. Many people have probably felt the same way after losing to the Yankees. It's Pena starting today. Okay. Just no word. Launches the desk across the room. Then after David Justice gets thrown out, stealing second at one point, you don't even see him do it. It just cuts after you're seeing him watch it. And then you see a chair go flying through a window and hit against the wall and almost shatter a picture frame. And then they cut to him hang out with his daughter. And then lastly, after they lose, they're on this losing streak. They've been playing poorly. He hears music being played in the clubhouse. He walks into the clubhouse, takes a bat, destroys the jukebox, and then he says, that's what losing sounds like. And then he, just for good measure, takes the Gatorade and then throws it on the floor. Underrated that I don't know if it was an actor that just didn't expect it. You can see the the silhouette of one player, I don't know who it is, just like jump a little bit when he throws the Gatorade. I don't know, conspiracy, if like he didn't know Brad Pitt was going to do that. And that's why he went like, oh God. You know what I mean?
And I'm glad we're talking about this scene more. I think that's the winner. Because that moment of silence after he goes berserk and everybody is just staring at him and the music is off and you feel that. I felt like I felt that while watching the movie. And I think the audience did too. Everybody on set probably did. Just a moment of, this is what losing feels like. And the fact that the team turned around after he trades Jeremy Giambi and then they start to go on that run, I think that's the scene. But I'm glad you brought all these up because there's so many good ones. The one at the beginning is fantastic.
Even when he's like this.
He gets there. And when also at the very, I think it's the first scene of the movie where he's like turning off the radio, turning it back on, turning it off. And then he walks by and the security guard is still watching. And the security guard goes to turn off the game. He's like, no, leave it on.
Yeah.
Like, we want
a quiet rage moment.
You know, he wanted to feel the pain, if that makes sense. I think that's what it was. Like, he wanted to feel what it was like to lose, where he turned it off, and you could see, in my opinion, this is how I watched it. He turns off the radio, and he basically is like, we're going to lose. I'm done listening. But then he's like, no. Listen.
Yeah.
Do it for you because you know it's going to impact further decisions. You know that it's going to light a fire under you. Turns it back on, listens, they lose. That moment of silence, walking through that anger, that is a phenomenal one. But I think that scene and that moment of silence is arguably the most impactful moment in the entire movie. So that's why I think that one takes the cake as the best rage moment. But the more you list them off, there's so many good ones that go under the radar, but I think that's the one.
I think you might have stumbled upon something, which is, I wonder if him breaking the radio or the stereo, whatever it is, the boombox. I wonder if that's kind of a reference to this first scene of the movie. I wonder if they're having a moment saying, the beginning of the movie, he said, no, play it. I want to hear it. And then later says, no, turn it off. I don't want to hear that. I'm wondering if that was like an intentional sort of, it's not a bookend because it's not the end of the movie, but it is a bookend on the misery of the movie. Yeah. That is when everything starts to turn around. So I don't know if that was intentional or not. I don't know if they're trying to there's some subtext there that's really interesting. Great point though. And it is because of that you convinced me. I was going to give it to the, okay, just launches the table.
So good. And those scenes where it's during the deadline, excuse me, and he's trying to flip guys and he's getting pissed. The scenes with Jonah Hill where Jonah Hill goes and they got him, Ricardo Rincon, the reliever, we got him. It's just those scenes are such gold. And I bet, and I know it's, a cliche, but that definitely inspired so many 10 to 13-year-olds across the country to eventually want to be a GM of a sports team. That moment, when you watch Draft Day with Kevin Costner, those high pressure situations have got to be so electric when you're in that moment. So those freakouts are phenomenal. I mean, I could see someone watching the movie and be like, why is he freaking out so much? I love that he freaks out. I think it's a phenomenal. I hope, to your point that you made at the very beginning, that it's accurate, that Billy Beane is actually just a rage monster.
The GM in the office who won't watch the games in person
for the A's, just punching numbers and being this guy ain't walking enough and just throw the radio.
By the way, Draft Day, true dynamite bad movie. Not bad movie, B movie. It's a B movie. You know what I mean?
Movie. It's not a good movie, but it's rewatchable 10 times.
Oh, I've seen it. That's what I mean. Those comfort whatever movies that you just I like.
My dad does not like Kevin Costner at all. Has probably seen Draft Day 10 times. It's just one of those movies where it's the acting isn't even good, but I keep watching it.
And those movies, by the way, they have a lot of quotable things, but not necessarily because the quotes are good the way that they are in this movie.
Yeah, they're
you remember I went into a fantasy football draft once, and I literally had a post-it note that was Odell and Baker Mayfield no matter what. needless to say, I had a bad season, but that's like what I did. I was trying to channel that. There's just some unintentionally so funny things in that movie. No, I'm with you. It's like a B movie that's just masterful. But yeah, I think for all the reasons we explained, you definitely convinced me. I was gonna go with okay, but instead I'm gonna go with that, especially because that moment at the beginning of the movie. I don't know if that's intentional to say like that radio he left on, this one he turned off. I thought that was interesting.
Either, but I
think it says something about the character
in the moment that meant something. I don't know if that was their intention. I don't know, but that's what I felt.
I think it says something about his character that's like, I heighten the losing, and especially what's the theme of the movie later on. You don't know what you have that's good, and then you don't necessarily appreciate it. Maybe that's his development as being like, I will only focus on the bad, and then when the good pops up, I literally take a baseball bat to it. I don't know. Maybe people could leave a comment. I'm not a super film expert, so maybe people will let us know. Let's move on to another Brad Pitt category, my friend. We mentioned it before. It is the best scene of Brad Pitt in food. All right. The nominees. Making ice cream for his daughter. It's just really cute. Saying, hey, you want chocolate syrup? That whole thing. Eating some peanuts when he's visiting at the time the Cleveland Indians. And then he's like, and they're like, how does Garcia do? And he's like, he's like, how about you kicking some cash? He says, how am I? 200K. And then keeps eating or whatever. I don't know why, but it is so satisfying the way he says 200K. I have said, I use that tone when talking about money. You know what I mean? I go like 15K. Like I try to channel it to this day. Next one, I'll tell him when they have to trade Jeremy Giambi to let him know that he's been traded. He's eating like a Twinkie or whatever. Another nominee, Jonah explained to two players how every first pitch strike batting average goes down by 75 points, which Brad Pitt then echoes, and it goes 75 points. Like he's like the background rapper in a music video. And he seems to be eating takeout. It's a fork. I can't totally see what he's eating, but it's takeout, some sort of noodles thing. It
looked like Chinese food. Like it was.
It's got to be that
or something. Yeah,
it's got to be that. And then lastly, passing by the window when they're finally on their little winning streak, where Peter, Jonah Hill's character, is watching it come back, and he's eating like a little burrito. He's like, and then keeps walking. Peter, do you have any nominees, or do you have a winner here?
No, I was going to have a nominee, but I'm so glad you mentioned it. Oh, my winner is easy. Oh, it's so easy.
Yeah.
When he shoves the Twinkie at his face. Like, just, I need an emergency Twinkie or something. Like, why was it like a pastry that he ate in one bite? He's got to go over to the other room anyway. He could have just kept eating it or eating it small, but instead he's like, screw it, I'm just going to shove this entire Twinkie into my mouth. And then go cut a guy or trade a guy. That's the best eating scene. But I'm so glad that this is a category because people might think like Brad Pitt food. When you're listing out the nominees, you start to realize, why is he eating aggressively in so many scenes? The rage and the eating. I don't know. Like, that has to be Billy Bean-esque. Like, that has to be some direction from people who knew Billy Bean, being like, he's always eating or doing stuff in that, and he's always a rage guy. Like, there's no way that was just the director being like, Brad Pitt, like, we want you to eat. And it doesn't even make any sense. So it has to be Billy Bean focused. And I think the casualness of shoving the Twinkie in his mouth, then going to go trade a guy, and not thinking anything about it and being the least nervous person in the room, I think is the winner. That was the one I was going to bring as a nominee, but I'm glad you mentioned it.
I got you. Look, man, I do my research. My research being watching one of my favorite movies of all time again.
I mean, you forgot Jonah Hill. You didn't put Jonah Hill on best performances, not Brad Pitt, so I wasn't sure.
I know. I think I just missed it. I think I just completely forgot to put it on there because it was so obvious. So two things. First of all, I do think that the way, that's a great point that he shoves the whole Twinkie in, which makes me almost think that wasn't part of the scene. That maybe he was just supposed to go, well,
he didn't,
but it works.
Like, and then keep it.
Yeah. Whoop. Yeah. Whoop. Thank you for that. Number two, not to make you look like a Dumbo, but it's not Billy Bean related. This is a Brad Pitt thing. If you were to Google Brad Pitt eating food, people have made compilations. This is what he does as an actor for whatever reason. It's like actually really funny that he does this in all movies. Ocean's 11, my personal favorite, probably my favorite movie of all time. At the end of the movie, he's eating his food. He loves eating food in movies. This is a thing he does, which is why apparently, yeah, this is a thing that he does. He loves eating food. Maybe it's for acting or whatever. It just helps him out. It gets him into the scene a little bit more. But he does that, or he just likes to eat, which frankly, yeah,
who doesn't?
Yeah. From as the great American philosopher RJ from the animated movie Over the Hedge, which you might have seen before. I don't know.
I have seen
referring to humans saying, or referring to them saying, we eat to live, these guys live to eat, referring to humans. The best underrated quote ever made. That's kind of how I feel about Brad Pitt in the acting movies. But yeah, I recommend everyone go look it up. You'll probably find a bunch of montages. I'm tempted to say the 200K, but I think it's too selfish. I think it's me being like, I personally love, because I've adapted that. If you ever hear me talking, Peter, and we're like, you know, how much money did Corbin Burns lose from the Milwaukee Brewers? I'll be like, 740K. Like you'll definitely notice. You're like, oh, you're doing the Billy Bean and Moneyball thing.
It's a great one, and that scene is so good too. So I think that adds cadence to your point, where it's like the best eating scene. I think you're right, but what is this category? Is it the best moment or the best scene? Because I think if it's the best scene, you're right. Because overall, like that scene where they're talking about cutting and trading guys, like isn't as good as when Billy Bean is in the front office with the Guardians talking shop. That's a better scene. But what made me laugh and focuses on food more is when Billy Bean just chugs the Twinkie and is out. Like exactly. So I think it's depending on the exact name of the category. Is it best food scene or is it best food moment?
I think we're going to go with best food moment because we have a best scene category.
Then I think the Twinkie one is the best moment, but I think the best scene with food is that one.
I don't know what it is that there's something about the way he says 200K that makes people talking about players that, not trying to be mean, probably irrelevant in the grand scheme of baseball. It makes it cool, and it makes me be like, yeah, I could be. It's the first scene where it starts to begin the whole, wow, being a GM must be sick.
another reason I think it's actually, because you see how casual he says 200K, like it's like 50 cents.
Yeah.
For the A's, that ain't casual. So for him to also use that as a way to be like, yeah, I can give you 200K. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
When the A's of all teams, like that matters to them, I think adds a little bit of, credence to what he's saying in that moment.
Absolutely. But I agree with you. If it's the best, food moment, it's specifically food. We already have rewatchable scene, which we're about to get into. I'm with you. It's the Twinkie, and it's funny. Like it's just really good. It's very memorable. So shouts to Brad Pitt. Now, Peter, let's move on to most rewatchable scene. The nominees: Scott Hatterberg's walk-off. Obviously, got to be a nominee. The opening scene of the movie, where they only are showing you the archival footage, and then they show you the 112 million versus 24 million. Just love that opening montage. The trade deadline, the one cut. This is me being film bro, whatever. The one cut when Billy Bean walks through the clubhouse and he quit, like one scene, no cuts or anything like that. He just talks to each of them saying, hey, Javi, you can hit that with the boat paddle. Hey, you got to see more pitches. Hey, great at bats tonight. The way it's just one smooth transition of a scene. Love that. Very big fan of the one shot, as many people are. The end of the movie, you hit a home run and he didn't even realize it. And then last nominee, Billy Bean's struggles in Major League Baseball. When they show you how he fared and then showing the different uniform change. This is a tough one, Peter. What do you got?
Oh, all great ones.
Yeah.
Such great ones.
Yeah.
I think one that you didn't mention, I love the overall scene where they're about to win their 20th game and they're winning. And he goes around, like he turns the car around to go watch the rest of the game, and then they start blowing the lead. And then, of course, the Scott Hatterberg home run. That one I love. And I think that's kind of a part of the scene that you're talking about, right? Because you said Scott Hatterberg home run. Is that kind of what you're including? Or
yeah, I think it includes most of it.
Like, does that include that?
I'd say when he gets to, I think I'd cut it off when he gets to the stadium. I think.
Okay.
It's tough,
Yeah,
though.
I mean,
when you do best scene, it's hard to, like,
I
cut
love
off.
that one. I love the one where he's in Cleveland and then hires, Jonah Hill's character.
Yeah, I just bought you from the Cleveland
Peter
Brand.
Brand, yeah.
So I just bought you from the Cleveland Indians.
I just bought you from the Cleveland Indians. Like, Yale economics baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love that one. That's a great quote.
Oh, that's a good. You're funny, Pete.
Yeah,
You're
that's
funny,
a great one too.
Yeah.
Thank you. But I think what. Okay, so my personal opinion, what made me fall in love with the movie was the GM scene, where he's on the phone with the Giants GM.
Yes.
And like he's making moves like that. Like that is my favorite part of the movie. So I'll go with that one, but I can hear arguments for all the nominees that you mentioned. So I'm not married to that one, but that would be my winner.
I'm with you. And you know why? A few episodes ago, Colby Olson was on this show to do best baseball movie scenes of all time. My number 3 was the trade deadline scene. It is the most unique. We've had the reason why it's not Hatterberg. We've had other baseball movies and sports movies in general with the big game-winning shot.
The walk-off home run. Yeah, exactly.
This might be the best one. It might be. But to me, I mean, the natural, when the lights explode, for me, it's how in the world did they get me to care about people talking on a phone abruptly? Yeah. The Peter
about relievers.
Going like that.
Ricardo Rincon, like this
is Ricardo
Rincon, like a 6th inning lefty.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is, they're not dealing like, oh, how do we get A-Rod? Right? No, this is under the radar moves that might get a mention on the Just Baseball show.
Exactly.
Like, oh yeah,
exactly.
The A's also added this reliever, and then Jack's podcast, like nice, and I'm like, yeah, he's a player, and then we move on. Like that move was a full scene, and it was absolutely electric. I think
to get you to care about that. Hey. And also, I love. Well, actually, I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, that's my winner trade deadline. Is my number 3 scene. If you're curious about the rest of them, go check out the Instagram for Baseball versus the World, or go check out my episode with Colby Olson, where we did our top 5 best baseball scenes of all time. Mine were obviously better, but go check out Colby's too. That's the winner. Now, Peter, just some. Oh, and also, I want to give second place to that one cut. It's just so satisfying when you've seen the movie so many times. That one will stick out again.
Another ignorance of history guy, Eric Chavez was a freaking beast.
Yeah,
Eric Chavez was a stud third baseman.
Yeah,
God, that was his
that
only
with a
mention.
paddle.
Yeah, it's like
just amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Now, I just have some observations. We're going to go through this really quickly because these could have fit in a category. So that's what we're doing. Should Billy Beane, should he have gone to the Red Sox? Should he have accepted that? Maybe. Personally, I feel like you should have known that people were going to find out what you were doing. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But it does go against kind of the whole point of the movie, right? It does kind of go against it. Him just being like, you know what? I like it here.
And it's truthful.
That's what I do.
And it's truthful. So, but like, should Billy Beane have done that? Should he have jumped ship? Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
But also a good idea. But I respect the sticking with your guns and sticking in your hometown and sticking where you built something and want to continue to build it. I get it.
And he's okay. He ends up getting paid a lot too. But in terms of the legacy and winning, it's a little unfortunate. But at least he has the movie. Do the A's win a World Series if ownership simply spends $1? The answer is yes. That's the answer. We already talked about the pitching rotation and the MVPs of that.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know if I actually don't think that's the right answer. I really don't. And the reason I don't think that's the right answer is how many championships do the Dodgers have after spending all this money? How many championships do the Yankees have since 2009 after spending all this money? How are the Mets doing in general? So no, I actually don't believe that if the A's spent a ton of money that they would automatically win the championship. Would they? Would they have improved their team? Yeah, but no.
I think it's more about for me, it's more about just that's what gives them an actual chance.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Breaking news, guys: you're not going to win baseball, the World Series, without spending somebody. It's just not going to happen.
Yes,
unless you're the Royals.
True. Do they have a way better chance of winning the World Series if they spend money? Absolutely. But do they win the World Series if they spend $1? You never would have known.
Robin Wright famous actress, barely in this movie. Just kind of funny that she's in there for like one scene. Billy Bean's ex-wife. Just really funny that she's just in this for one scene.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I didn't think
the
about
Lord
that.
of the Rings viral memes. I don't know if you're a Lord of the Rings head, but people were doing the whole we have to recreate them in the aggregate, rich teams, poor teams. They basically did that with the lexicon of Lord of the Rings, being like, Frodo, franchise player. Like it was really funny and they went super viral and it actually made people I know watch the movie for the first time. So shouts to that. People, you know what I'm talking about if you're super online. Just a quick shout out to Jeremy Giambi. It's not the movie's fault, but he did unfortunately pass drug overdose, I believe. And I'm bringing it up because yes, Philip Seymour Hoffman passed too, but the movie is literally about how he has like off-field problems, and it's a little weird when you watch it. You're like, oh, this sucks. You know what I mean? Like this kind of unintentionally fortuitous of the movie. When in the trade deadline, underrated, hilarious movie. Jonah missing the high five initially, just so relatable. It's so good. Come on,
And
that's
it
great.
just makes sense too that it's the nerd on the computer like missing the high five when he lands his big fish. Yeah, no, it is funny.
Really good. The Kevin Youkilis name drop. It's just fun, especially I know you're a Yankee fan. Tortured you guys for a while, so that's one in there. What else we got here? How many did you do? 47. Actually, 51. I don't know why I lied just now.
I love that one.
I relate to it because I do that shit too, Peter. I lie about the dumbest things. Doesn't matter. You could be like, "Hey, Javi, you want to come out tonight?" I'll be like, "Yeah, I'd love to. But I just, I'm super busy." And it's like, why am I lying right now? I'm not busy. Or like, "Hey, Javi, did you eat Taco Bell last night?" No. Why? It doesn't. You know what I mean? Like I lie about these little things sometimes that don't matter at all. What else? What else we got here? Oscar snubs. The 84th Academy Awards. Do you know what won Best Picture instead of Moneyball?
No idea.
The Artist. Have you ever seen The Artist?
Never. Don't plan on it either. Especially if they took away an Oscar from the Moneyball. I actually hate that movie now. I've never watched it and I've never heard of it, but I hate it.
I think that you could make an argument that The Descendants was a better pick. Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. The Help, Hugo, Midnight in Paris, Moneyball, The Tree of Life, and War Horse were all the nominees. Whatever about War Horse. The Help, that doesn't age well. We don't have to get into that one. That is a movie that does not age well. Just, Peter.
Never even heard of that one.
If you literally just Google it and look at it, you'll be like, yep, I don't even need to know anything. So that's just a little fun treat for you after this. Everyone involved with the movie is also like, nobody talks about The Artist anymore. Everyone talks about Moneyball. I appreciate the weirdness of The Artist. It's a black and white movie, but come on now. But to me, more egregious. By the way, second straight year of a movie getting viciously snubbed by the Oscars. That also had to do with weird history stuff. The Social Network the year before losing to The King's Speech. To me, the bigger thing. You want to make the argument, we really like the aesthetic of The Artist. Maybe we made a mistake, but in the moment, like it was a really unique thing. Cool, that's fine. Brad Pitt losing Best Actor to Jean Dujardin from The Artist. Inexcusable. I have not seen this man in any other movie since. Maybe that's not his fault, but I'm just saying this is Brad Pitt's role, and this is why the Oscars are always a mess, because there's doing these makeup awards where they have to. He was great in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, finally gets his Oscar, but it's also like, all right, we got to give this guy an Oscar. Happens all the time. He should have won for this. It's insulting. I'm upset.
I agree. I don't even know who the hell you're talking about, but I agree with you.
Last observation. I'm putting on my best Stephen A. Smith mask for the hottest take. I think this movie might have been the worst thing that happened in baseball in the last 30 years.
In what way? What a dumb take. What do you even mean?
Okay, so now that the aggregators are gone, I mean in terms of discourse only, not literally baseball. But it does allude to something. What I mean by that is it's fascinating. First of all, it is fascinating how this movie is sometimes taken as gospel, which we talked about in The Ignorance of History. I think there are two interpretations of this movie. Number one, about people who go against the grain and the struggles with innovating in a place and an ecosystem that does not want to innovate, and the struggles you will face doing that. Or the other, more cynical view of this movie is about how, you know what rules? Paying people less. It's awesome. And I think that this movie, there are a lot of fans that have been gaslit into thinking it's actually cool that the Baltimore Orioles have a $30 million payroll. And they say, well, look how many games they won. I get this all the time with the Brewers. Well, Javi, Brewers, they're leading their division. Yeah. And the reason they will never win a World Series unless they spend. I'm not saying that you got to be the Dodgers. Definitely don't have to be the Padres. But this idea that you can win the World Series or be competitive consistently, I just feel like a lot of people take from Moneyball that, and they use that as a reason to be like, nah, man, we don't have to spend. Like, look how good the Guardians are this year. They could win. I'm not saying they can't. It's not impossible. Like I said, the Royals. But the Royals are the anomaly. And I'm saying the Astros. The Astros don't have the biggest payroll in the league, but they, keep your Altuves. They keep some of those. You have to have some amount of money spent. That's why the Orioles getting a new owner recently. That's why I'm like, okay, cool. Now they'll win. Last year, I told you, I don't know if I told you this. I was like, yeah, they're going to get smoked. You can't win in the postseason unless you bring some star players to your team. And I think a lot of people use regular season success. It's the only sport where they're like, well, the Brewers were great in the regular season last year. Congrats. Guess what? Fun fact, the Milwaukee Brewers, the last time they were in the World Series, they were in the American League. That's how long it's been. The Padres made it in at least 1998, and they're trying. That's my beef with Moneyball. But like I said, two views. It's also a movie about innovation and creativity. And I think that's what makes the movie so brilliant, honestly.
So there was the first part of your take were saying that it really doomed baseball. And I agree with your point about that you have to spend money. But like, how can we blame Moneyball for that?
No, I guess that's me being an asshole.
I can't make the connection between those two. It's not like every team was spending money.
Is what I think. You can be blamed
and then
on.
20 of them watched Moneyball and said, you know what? Why would we ever spend money ever again? Look at what the A's did, right? So I understand where you're coming from in the sense of Moneyball, the movie, showed a team and glorified a team that made players pay for soda. And that they were able to win 100 games or whatever their record was. And that you can do that too if you find inefficiencies in the market. But it was just highlighting a story rather than saying this is the way. Because at the end, I mean, the end scene is literally this team could win games in the regular season, but when it came to the playoffs, they couldn't win. So at the end,
and then the Red Sox end up doing it and winning.
Exactly. They literally say this way cannot win a championship. The Red Sox adopted this way and spent money and won a championship. So that's why I don't think those 2 points collide. But I'm not disagreeing with the point that you made. I just don't think they relate to the movie.
Here's how I'll sum it up. I think it's not literally the reason. Literally the reason is because rich people stink. You know what I mean? Like, that's how we could get into that. I think it's more of this. It's a classic debate of like, how much is our art responsible when it's people who are taking the wrong impression, i.e. is it the Wolf of Wall Street's fault that people don't get that Jordan Belfort is a piece of crap and that they are like, oh, I'm on my Jordan. Is that the movie's fault? That's what I think is interesting. So I think it's the movie unintentionally, not its fault, that there are some fans who are like, you got to be like Moneyball A's, man. That's what I think it is.
Fair.
You know what I'm saying? There's a little gray area that I'm trying to fit in. But anyway, that's my last observation. You got to go soon. So final category. Who won the movie? The nominees. Math. Just math. The Oakland A's. Brad Pitt. Jonah Hill. The Sport of Baseball. Or capitalism. Which basically has to do with my last point. What do you think, Pete? And if you have any other nominees too.
I think you could group my last nominee into math. I think analytics won in this movie. Because I think that the idea of Moneyball, when you first think about Moneyball, you think not spending money, but still creating a good product on the field. And I think that's what a lot of teams are trying to do right now. Like, it's not the exact Bill James handbook, where if you weight these stats farther than these, you'll find inefficiencies in the market. The market is very efficient right now.
Yeah.
Right? Every front office has a million Princeton, Harvard, Yale math guys just sitting in a room finding inefficiencies. So it's really, really hard to find one. But the teams that can ultimately are the most successful.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the idea of data in baseball is the real winner here, because teams who use the data in the right way, because you can use data in the wrong way. You can read it the wrong way, or, find data that fits your narrative, right? Let's say, like, in my emotional being, I think that the Yankees are better than the Orioles.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm an Orioles fan, and I think the Orioles are better than the Yankees. But the empirical data might say that the Yankees are better, right? But I can find a stat being like, well, Gunnar Henderson has way more home runs than Anthony Volpe, and Gunnar is the shortstop, right? The most important position. The Orioles have to be, like, you can use data to fit a narrative, but the teams that use data in the right way ultimately have proven to be successful. So I think that's the winner. I think math/analytics, the age of Moneyball, the name of the movie, I think that's the winner.
I agree. I think it made the idea of thinking about analytics and sports seem cool.
Yeah.
And sometimes
that's another really good point. It made it
sometimes
seem
it's cool.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is cool. Do I hate win probability when they're showing it live on the broadcast? Yeah. I have eyes. The Padres are up by 8 in the 9th inning. I don't need to be told that they have a chance of winning.
When the Padres blow a lead and you got a Sarah Lang tweet, and it's like, damn it, Sarah, I love you, but come on, we just freaking lost.
And I'm like, win probability, I have such beef with that stat. I hate it so much. It just pisses me off to no end. I'm like, yeah, guess what? It's probably unlikely that the Falcons are going to lose. I know that they did, but I don't need to be told that. Like, I'm watching the game, but whatever. I think that this is really hard for me because on the one hand, you just go, well, Brad Pitt, he was unbelievable in this. And it's like his career defining performance, even though he wins the Oscar for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This is like his most memorable movie, Oceans and Seven. I know he's been in a lot, but I feel like this is the movie for a lot of people. Part of me wants to say capitalism, but as we discussed earlier, that's the fun part about talking about this movie is it the fault of the movie that people took maybe the negative, potentially bad perspective from it? I don't think so. So that's not the winner for me. I'm with you. I think it's math. I think it's analytics. It's just the idea of assembling teams. Everyone thinks they are Billy Beane now when they have a fantasy team. It made GMs, maybe we could even just shorten it to GMs, the general manager position. This is the first movie to make that like a real true star. We've had movies that have made the sports agent a star, shout out Jerry Maguire, but we haven't quite had the GM who puts it together and is sitting behind computers watching tape, the great montage when they show you all the players and all the defects. I think I'm with you. I think the winner of Moneyball, all in all, is them. Although Oakland A's are real close. I think they're close. I will say this. I think if we recorded this podcast 5 years ago, the Oakland A's are the winner because they aren't yet. Now they're viewed as like the losers of the movie. Now you watch this movie and you're seeing that Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred and company, and all the billionaire owners just straight up allowed the A's to become a AAA team. Basically, that's not even an exaggeration. They are literally going to be playing in a AAA stadium for the next couple of years at least. And they just took a crap on their fan base and they didn't even have a plan to move immediately. So they're like, hey, we hate you all, middle figure and all that stuff. But by the way, we'll still play here next year. Like, that's insane that that's happened. I'm with you though. I think all in all, it just made math cool. And as someone who is an enemy who hates math, it is my arch nemesis. There's nothing I've been worse at in life, with the exception of talking to girls, than math. I think that's the winner. It made it cool. Maybe it didn't give you all the specifics necessarily, but you were like, yeah, man, I want to be a GM. I want to do this. So I think math, analytics, that part of sports, looking into it deeper than just, oh, ugly girlfriend, or, oh, he throws funny. And sometimes it's annoying. I mentioned win probability, but sometimes it's true. There's a reason we don't use wins loss to determine the best pitchers anymore. There's a reason why, we get mad at the hot take people on sports channels. It's because we know you guys are just uninformed and your old boomer takes, right? So I agree with you. Math and analytics, making that shit cool is unbelievable. I don't know how they did it. I can't think of any other movie that did, with the exception of Good Will Hunting. Is that the only movie that made Imitation Game? Maybe
kind of.
Are those the only kind of, maybe a little bit. Are those?
I just watched Imitation Game recently. I thought it was fantastic.
Oh yeah, it's really good. It's really good.
And that one, Well, Oppenheimer kind of.
I'd say that's like
Creating of the bomb with
science.
Einstein. I think that's true. It's
I know, but I know
science,
that
but I
they're
think
like the same
that
thing.
made it
But
cool. Like
yeah,
I was like, ooh, like that would be
yes,
sick,
science is
right?
cool.
And
Yeah,
like I
look at
hate
them
see
talking.
your relationship with math is my relationship with science. I was always horrible at like biology,
Oh, me too.
chemistry,
Yeah.
physics, like all that kind of stuff. Really good at math personally, but you get me into bio, I have no idea what's going on. So that at least in turn, Oppenheimer did that for me. But you're right, it's more science, not math.
That's the winner. That's the winner. Well, folks, if you agree or disagree with any of our takes, let us know in the comments on wherever the heck you see this. This has been another episode of Baseball versus the World, a podcast about how baseball relates to the rest of the world and how the rest of the world relates to baseball. I am Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at JAVIIPENO. That's Peter Appel at Peter Appel23. Honestly, you don't have to follow him. He's got plenty of followers already. Like, let's just be real. But you can check that out if you want. Peter, do you have any final words you'd like to say for the good folks?
Just appreciate you having me on, and I love this show, and I hope people tune in for how often Javi does it, because he does a great job, and it's a good segue from like his WRC plus, his this, his that, his stats, his, breakdowns of the player, and just to kind of hang out and talk fun things and how baseball relates to the world, because it's so funny. You watch any movie these days. Like, I'm even watching movies with my girlfriend because my girlfriend's a huge movie buff. And she always be like, why is baseball in every movie? You can start it's like, even like the little scenes, like right now I'm obsessed with The Boys. Right? The Boys, the TV show. It is just unbelievably amazing.
Oh boy. That's a wild
Homelander
show,
playing catch with Ryan. Like, just playing catch, like those sorts of things. Baseball's in every movie, it does seem like. And it seems like a lot of directors, if they had to choose their favorite sport, it probably would be baseball. So this show is going to go on for a long time because you have so much content to go over. And I'm really excited to keep listening.
Absolutely, man. Greatly appreciate it. Future episodes of this podcast, we've got plenty. We might do worst uniforms of all time. We might just do some stuff that describe every team, movies that describe every current baseball team. We're going to be doing that. And we're in the process of recruiting a very special guest for an episode about the X-Men and their history with baseball. Not making that up. They, for some reason, play baseball more than any fictional characters I've ever come across. And maybe draft a little team of X-Men who could play baseball. That'll be a lot of fun. But until that next time, everybody, stay golden, love baseball, and frankly, just how can you not be romantic about it? We'll see you next time.